There they are cut off. What I'm going to do is just shave them down all to the same height, and we'll go from there. I'm going to set it up in the shaper. I'll go ahead and dial in the vise and get them set up, and then we'll start cutting these. I'm just going to get them all to the same height next, and then we're going to cut down the sides so we've got a key sticking in the center of it. And then I think to index front to back, along with the two bolt holes that we bolt our jaws on with, I'm probably just going to go ahead and cut a key or a keyway across here, and we'll either tightly fit and Loctite a key down in there that will extend up into the top jaws, or else we'll silver solder it in, do something to permanently affix them in there. But I think that's probably the best way to go. We'll probably leave about a 3/8 key down the center. I haven't finished up the drawing for this. These jaws are about 7/8 of an inch wide. So we could go to a 1/2 inch key. I don't know, 3/8, 7/16, half, something like that. It's not really important, other than I will make it a fairly nominal dimension so I can take a standard end mill and slot down for different jaw adapters as I build them. So anyway, that's where we are. I'm going to go ahead and get the shaper set up, and we'll dial in the vise, and then we'll go ahead and start cutting. All we're doing is just decking them off. We're doing them as a gang. And we're just taking them down to where they're all at the same level at this point. I don't really care what the height is that much. We just want to clean up all the old stuff there, and then we'll finish laying them out and start cutting them. Okay, at that feed rate, it takes just that 4.5 minutes to cut across there. And it's not a glass smooth finish. There's some roughness to it, but for what it's going to be used for, I think that's just fine. There's our key fit in there. That's a real nice fit. And what I'll do is we'll just make individual keys for each one of these, and we'll set them down in there, silver solder them, and then we may actually take and shape them off the top, because we only want them to be about as thick as the top of the jaws, because we're going to machine down both sides. I'm probably going to do that in the mill, but we'll machine down both sides of each of those jaws to align side to side with whatever our top jaw pieces are. And this is just to hold it front to back. And then of course there'll be two, probably 3/8/16 socket head cap screws in there to hold each of the jaws on. So we'll have 6 of those in there. And they're all keyed together, they'll hold there in position. That's a tight enough fit, but that'll work fine. So now, as long as we center up on each of the jaws when we drill our holes, well, we've got perfect alignment front to back, so that should work well. Well, today I made a little more progress on the 3-jaw chuck here that we're modifying for our ring jaws or our interchangeable jaws. And this is what our jaws look like here. I've kind of been negligent in taping the machining of these, but it's all basic machining, and I thought I'd go over it for you. We'd already finished the chuck. It's been sitting there waiting for the jaws to be done. And I started out in the shaper, and I started by cutting my cross slot before I machined any of the rest of this stuff away. And this is just tough enough that with these little shapers, when they're, any of these small machine tools, when they've got a little wear in them, why, it can be a little bit hard to make them work. And I cut a groove in there. It really wasn't deep enough once I got a little bit more machining done on it, and I just set it up in the mill and cut my cross slot after I had the rest of it done. So what I did is I just laid out my slots on the side, and the way it's going to work is the jaws are going to sit down over, and in our soft jaws we'll to prep them, we'll cut our slot down there, drill them, and countersink them for cap screws probably, and then we're going to have a crossbar in here to index front to back. So what I did is I just set it up in the mill, and I cut these. They're 1/4 inch deep, which is just almost level with the top of the chuck. So we're going to be close there, but that's all right. And once I got that done, I went ahead and ganged them all 3 together, cut a cross slot across here, which is going to accept the little keys here. And these keys, I'm going to go ahead and silver solder them in place. Then once that's done, well, I'll set them back up in the mill, and we'll mill them up so they're flush with the top and flush with the ends. So we've got a little T in there like that. It'll be flush. This will be our top level for all of it, and our jaws will index right up on there, so they'll positively index in that position, and the 2 cap screws will hold them down. And 1/4 inch deep, they're a little over 375 wide and closer to 4 wide, and the spacing and everything was kind of arbitrary because we've got enough adjustment in them that we can either affix our jaws in this center area between our 2 bolts, or if we need a bigger ring, we can actually use the back of the back section of that to affix our rings on, or whatever we need to do. So I think we've got lots of adjustment there. 1.5 inch spacing between the holes. They're tapped 5/8 or 5/16 24, and a lot of times I'll go 3/8 24 or 3/8 18 on this kind of stuff. I think 5/16 is plenty, plus it gives a little more room to work around. So did that, started off with high-speed steel to cut this. It cut it all right, and I made it through the first jaw or jaw and a half with it, and it was just working my old dull cutter too hard, so I ended up and took a carbide. The only 3/8 carbide I had in the house was a high performance for aluminum, but I thought, well, we'll donate that one to the cause if we need to, and we went ahead and machined that. It worked a whole lot better, worked real well, and then went back, drilled and tapped them, and now we're ready to, and now I've deburred them, ready to silver solder them together. So what's going to happen is I'll channel out the bottoms a little bit and scuff the bottom of that, and then we're just going to silver solder them in place, and that's going to be the next project. But anyway, this is the way they're going to go together, and our jaws will sit right in there. Of course, I've gone back and renumbered everything. I think I showed that in the last little portion of this video. I'll just set just like that with our interchangeable jaws on top. I wanted to go ahead and drill and tap these before I silver soldered them up, because we'll probably harden those jaws will probably harden when we silver solder them on. I'm not going to worry a whole lot about cooling them exceptionally slow. I'll let them naturally cool, but I'm not going to go out of my way to harden the rest of it. My little crossbars are just 1018, just a little bit of cold roll that I had here, and they'll work just fine for this. So, there we go. So here's our silver solder. Here's our flux, and this is just some ultraflux. This is by Engelhand. I'll look and see if I've got a link for this stuff. I've had this for quite a while, and you're going to end up and use whatever your local welding supply has in stock and recommends for you. You know, they've usually got a pretty good indication of what's available, and usually got something in stock that's going to work real well. And if they didn't stock it, why they wouldn't, or if they didn't like it, they probably wouldn't stock it. So if you don't find this particular product online or something you think that's equivalent, why, check with your local welding shop. They're always a good place to go for supplies. If you're decent to them and tell them that you don't know what you're looking for and explain what you want, well, usually they can help you out. So this just happens to be what I use. I've used this same product for years just because it's lasted for years. So works just fine. And I just flex up both surfaces a little bit. And I've already previously cleaned these and sanded the bottoms to give them a little more bite. So we're just going to silver solder them up just like that, and then we'll go back and finish machining them, and the bottom portions of the jaws will be done. Alright, so here's the setup. Got it set up on the jaws. We're just kind of using the vise as a heat sink just to kind of protect the bottom end a little bit. I'm not overly concerned about it. These are hard and relatively tough, but they're, are not exceptionally hard, and they are relatively tough. So we've got our pieces all prepped, silver solder in. All I'm going to do is try and heat this area fairly locally. We're going to put a little silver solder in there and get a good bond with it, and then we're just going to let it sit and cool. understand once you get it figured out why it's just that quick, and you've got good penetration on it, and that's going to be a good solder joint. So I'm going to go ahead and put this, roll the torch up, put it all away again, let this one cool, and then we'll start cleaning it up. I think I may just lightly check this, wipe this down, and then I think I may throw it in the sandblaster just to knock the scale off or the extra silver solder and stuff, and then we'll go back and machine them. But we'll get that cleaned up and bring you back. I keep several sizes of these little cheap C-clamps just for this. You know, if I burn them up, why I burn them up. If they get screwed up, why it's no big loss, because they're cheap. So we've got our jaws cleaned up, ready to go to the milling machine. This is the way they look. Once they're cleaned off and ran them through the sandblaster, like I say, looks like we've got real good penetration with the silver solder all the way around. I've got no problems with any of those. I haven't checked hardness yet on these to see if it really feels like it's changed. I've got a little bit of scale yet to clean off, but once we get these machined down, I will sandblast them one final time, because I've got a little bit of deburring to do, just wear on the edge that's rolled over there on the jaws that were there, that needs to be cleaned up a little bit. But yeah, all three of them look real good. I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to take them over and we'll set them up in the milling machine the same way I had stuff set up before. I'm just going to machine the tops of them off to where we're flush here, and then we're going to square up the sides on each of them. So, okay, here's all three of our jaws shortened up. And let's go ahead and smooth them down. Okay, just go right off. And sandblast one more time. I will see a one. That's a random. See, I get that a little bit broken off there, and I got a little burn from it, so clean those all right here. Let me get that. Check back the sandblast one more time. Let's go ahead and clean up this little numbers here in front of that. Okay, here's our jaws. And that's pretty much final configuration. So we can fit those in, and then we can start building jaws for them. So that'll be the next little section. Is we'll build jaws. I have to build jaws, and I have to build a chuck key for this, because this is the chuck key off of the chuck that's on the CNC machine. And let's see, this is number 1 here. 2. This will be our number 3. So I'm going to have the bluing tanks fired up. I may go ahead and just throw those jaws into the bluing tanks just because, like I say, I'll have it running. And I've got a short run of blued parts to go in. So I think that will work well. So like I say, we've got this pretty well wrapped up other than just the jaws. With this, we're pretty much done with this chuck other than to build the accessory jaws and start fitting them. We'll have to build a chuck key yet to actually fit this. This is my bigger chuck key that fits on the CNC chucks. But we need one this size to go just with the Sheldon Lathe for both this and the 4-jaw chuck. They both take the same size chuck key. The only other thing I may do is once we set this back up on the lathe, we'll indicate it true, and we may build some sort of a parallel system to hold material a certain distance off, so we've got a certain height off of it. So anyway, that's something for down the road if it's worth doing. But anyway, I had to run the bluing tanks today, so we went ahead and ran these chucks or these jaws through. And this is the number 3 jaw. They look like this. We haven't even wiped them down. And I didn't do any other prep other than what we'd already done to these when we cleaned them up. We'll see a little bit of silver solder along the edges of the seams, but I'm not going to worry about that. This is just nicety stuff now that I can do. So that's the way they look. There's our number 3 jaw. This is our number 2 jaw here. And this is just run through my standard bluing tanks that I would normally use. Like I say, I had another little project that I needed to run through the bluing tanks, and it was just a small job, so we went ahead and just threw these in. And I've previously given my philosophy about how I run my bluing tanks. So I won't go into that. There'll be some more stuff related to bluing going on here before too long. That's a project in and of itself. And there's our number 1 jaw. So that's what they look like. That's what it is. This will be our number 2. So there it is. That's pretty well finished up now. Like I say, just the chuck itself is going to be functional once we make our first set of jaws, and we'll build jaws as we see appropriate for it. And part of them are going to be steel, part of them are going to be aluminum. It's just whatever application I've got. There we go. Hopefully you found that a little bit useful and interesting. And if you haven't already, I'd appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. If you hit the bell notification, you'll know when I put out a new video. And any comments or suggestions for me, leave them in the comment section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.